What's the most absurd HOA/landlord rule that backfired in spectacular fashion? The new HOA rule arrived on pink paper that looked like it regretted being born. No personal items on balconies, subhead, including plants, wind chimes, or any object that suggests joy. Our complex had three kinds of residents: garden witches, wind chime philosophers, and people who own exactly one chair and a stubborn sunrise. The rule offended all three. The president of the HOA, a man whose hobbies included bylaws and athletic frowning, cited uniform aesthetics. He did not foresee the uniform aesthetics uprising. Within a week, everyone technically complied, and the building turned into a legal sculpture garden. Plants. Illegal. Art installation titled Communal Photosynthesis Unit. Fully compliant. Wind chimes. Forbidden. Experimental microclimate sonics array. Not on the list. My neighbor Nina, Queen of Basil, created a temporary art piece that involved basil in gray modular tubs labeled "This is not basil." The tub sat exactly 3 inches inside her sliding door, invisible from the sidewalk but visible to the HOA's soul. Across the way, a retired engineer named Walt built a balcony-sized diorama of a balcony, complete with tiny forbidden plants and a 1/12 scale chair. He invited tours and accepted tips in potting soil. The rule's undoing began with the pigeons. With no plants, our railings became a runway for winged hooligans. They threw bachelor parties at dawn. They conducted meetings about bread. Within days, balconies were Jackson Pollocks of regret. The HOA sent a second pink letter: "No bird feeding." We were not feeding, the birds were freelancing. The letter ended with, "We appreciate your cooperation during this transitional period," which is how captains talk to mutinies. Nina proposed a solution: the Great Balcony Beautification Day. Everyone would move their art inside for a morning, power wash the Pigeon Manifesto, and present alternate aesthetic guidelines to the HOA committee over lemonade and argument. Walt drafted a mock-up of permitted items, which included plants that do not violate wind, and chimes whose volume suggests a normal childhood. On Beautification Day, the building became a sitcom. Someone DJ'd a playlist called HOA but Make It Fun. We scraped, scrubbed, and negotiated stains with the diplomacy of the UN. The president arrived with a clipboard and a scowl you could set a clock by. He explained liability and precedent. We explained that precedent without basil is a crime against pasta. Then fate, a television crew from the local morning show rolled up for a completely different segment, Summertime Balcony Hacks, and misheard our carnival as a scheduled community event. The reporter beamed at the camera and declared, "This building is a model for cooperative urban living." The president, caught in 4K, attempted a smile. The city watched us rehang tiny banners that read "Welcome back, Reason." The spectacle forced a meeting. In the community room, fluorescents, folding chairs, ancestral coffee, Walt presented the Uniform Aesthetics 2.0 proposal: allow a limited number of personal joy installations per balcony, plants in subdued containers, wind chimes under decibel 4, 1 chair per head, plus a visiting aunt allowance. Nina distributed cookies shaped like leaves, the sugar softened anger into policy. The president tried a counter: "What about seasonal creep?" Nina countered back: "We'll ban inflatable skeletons until October 1st. A hush, a compromise, a handshake that felt like fresh paint drying. The next week, balconies bloomed. Basil returned with a permit. A single wind chime tinkled at an approved distance. Someone installed a discreet shelf for a discreet mug of tea. The pigeons, offended by order, relocated to a billboard that deserved them. The president, to his credit, admitted the building looked less like a brochure for sadness. I keep a copy of the revised guidelines on my fridge: plants permitted, 3. Wind chime permitted, less than or equal to 1. Joy recommended, infinity. On warm nights, Nina clips basil for the complex and Walt tunes his chime to something that sounds like contentment. When the local news followed up, the president said, "We decided aesthetics includes neighbors, and I swear you could hear the bylaws blush.
What's the wildest public transit moment where a whole train car became a team? On a Tuesday flavored like damp paper, the green line stalled between stations with the dramatic clarity of a soap opera pause. Lights stayed on, AC coughed. The speaker promised a brief hold, in a tone that lacked confidence. Our cars cast. A violinist hugging her case, a dad with a stroller, two college kids sharing one headphone, a woman reading a paperback titled Danger at Noon, and a guy in a suit making a PowerPoint about PowerPoints. At minute 5, the PA apologized. At minute 10, we crossed the threshold into friendship. The stroller baby started a low babble like a tiny radio. The violinist hummed backup. The suit looked up from his laptop, blinking as if seeing us for the first time. A teenager announced he had 3 granola bars and would trade one for a good train story. We invented a black market of narratives and snacks. Then someone pulled the emergency intercom because car 3 had a medical situation. A passenger dizzy, pale. The conductor asked if anyone had training. The paperback woman did nurse night shift, calm in sneakers. She moved through the door with the authority of someone whose hands know next steps. We passed her water, a spare mask, a jacket for a pillow, and the feeling that we were useful. Waiting morphed into project management. The PowerPoint guy organized a list of who had chargers and who needed them. We formed a charging co-op that looked like spaghetti with morale. A teen taught the stroller dad to make a paper crane from a MetroCard sleeve. The baby tried to eat the crane. A compromise was reached. The conductor returned with info. A door fault up ahead. Maintenance en route. 10 more minutes, he said, which everyone knows is a flexible poem. We adopted a grandmother visiting from Ohio who confessed she'd never been underground this long. We told her about the city in bite-sized affection. The noodle place, the park, the bench that knows secrets. She gave us peppermints and the wisdom of weather. A man with a Bluetooth speaker asked, "Music?" And we all gave the shrug of democracy. He cued low-volume Motown. The violinist, unable to resist, played along so gently it felt like breeze. People smiled like they were remembering a good door. We were now a wedding reception without the aunt who dances too hard. The train exhaled. The baby slept. Maintenance arrived, 2 humans with vests and heroic utility belts. They resolved the fault by whispering to a panel and threatening it with a wrench. We cheered with commuter volume, which is to say, volume 3. The nurse returned. The dizzy passenger was stable, hydrated, and blessed with 6 new ants. When the train crawled forward, the car applauded the laws of motion. At the platform, people flowed out but not apart. We held doors, passed strollers, high-fived a grandmother. The violinist played us off. 8 bars of something that smelled like sun on old wood. On the escalator, the PowerPoint guy said, "Good luck out there." And it sounded less like habit and more like intent. Weeks later, I saw the nurse at a coffee shop and bought her a muffin like a shy thank you. She laughed and said, "We all did it." I nodded. Public transit is a gamble. Sometimes a delay, sometimes a song, sometimes a small city in a steel tube that remembers how to be kind.
What's the most dramatic lost phone saga that turned strangers into detectives? I found the phone on a park bench confessing 3% battery like a dying star. The lock screen, a dog doing taxes. The time, 6:12 p.m. The weather, plot. I held it up and asked the park, "Anyone missing a rectangle?" And the park said wind. I could drop it at a police station and play bureaucracy roulette, or I could become a self-appointed detective with a moral snack budget. Rule 1. Power. I plugged it into my portable charger. Saints bless overprepared past me. Rule 2. Clues without being creepy. The notifications revealed a group chat named Cousins Who Yell and a calendar alert for Auntie Vi's 70th, tonight. Rule 3. Emergency contacts. The medical ID listed an ICE contact, Ma, home, an actual landline, a unicorn. I called. Rings like a rotary prayer. "Hello," a voice asked, full of hope and casserole. I explained. Found a phone, bench confession, Auntie Vi imminent. Ma said, "We are already late," and I heard a living room stand up. She gave me an address 5 blocks away and described her son, blue jacket, haircut like he tried. I promised to walk the phone over and bring it more battery than it deserved. Halfway there, I received a call from the phone I was holding. A number labeled Cousin Tash. "Who is this?" she demanded with love. I responded with the calm of a librarian. "A passerby, a charger, mission Auntie Vi." Tash screamed relief and ordered me to stay put by the big mural because they were deploying. 2 minutes later, 3 cousins rounded the corner like a family SWAT team. One carried an ice cream cake the size of a toddler. One carried balloons. One carried palpable narrative energy. Blue Jacket haircut like he tried arrived breathless. He saw the phone, saw me, saw the charger like a tiny life raft. "You saved the slideshow," he gasped. Apparently, the birthday tribute. Digitized photos of Auntie Vi spanning 6 decades and 2 hairstyles lived only on that phone. There had been airdrop mishaps, cloud misunderstandings, and a bite from the dog who does taxes. We sprinted the last block together like a very slow relay team. At the party, the living room was already a bouquet of humans. Auntie Vi wore a tiara so confident it needed its own zip code. The cousins connected the phone to a TV via a cable the color of destiny. The slideshow rolled. Baby Vi in black and white. Vi in a prom dress that could legally vote. Vi grinning in a kitchen holding a pot the size of joy. People laugh the way you laugh when a photo reveals the exact sweater you still own. They cried the way you cry when a life gets named in 30 frames per second. They pulled me into the room like I belonged there, sat me on a chair that knew history, and fed me the corners of the ice cream cake. The best part, fight me. Ma introduced me as the detective, which embarrassed me and also rearranged my soul. Blue Jacket apologized to the dog for swearing earlier. The dog licked the phone like absolution. Later, when the candles smoked and the cousins argued about who had the best version of the potato salad recipe, "Auntie Vi, none of you respect dill." Blue Jacket asked how I knew to check medical ID. "I read manuals," I said, which is not true. I read disasters. We traded numbers, his now newly tethered to clouds forever. He Venmo'd me for the charger. I refused. He paid me in Tupperware lasagna later that week. Now, whenever I pass the bench, I look down out of reflex. I have become a tiny lighthouse for lost rectangles. Sometimes there's nothing. Sometimes there's a wallet with a library card, and I get to return a person to their overdue books. And sometimes there's a dog on a lock screen doing taxes, and a family waiting for a slideshow no one else could have told. What's the most chaotic volunteer shift at a charity run that somehow worked out? I signed up to hand out water at mile 9 of the run for the library because I love books and also handing strangers cups like a benevolent raccoon. The coordinator, a woman named Joy with a whistle that could reassemble geese, gave our team a table, 300 paper cups, and a pep talk. Smile, aim for hands, hydrate dreams. At 7:45 a.m., the first wave of gazelles thundered by and took cups like magic tricks. We refilled like a pit crew. By 8:10, chaos. The delivery truck with more water had detoured to mile 11, and our table looked like the end of a party. Joy radioed, the radio shrugged, and we improvised. We established the Splash and Go Innovation Initiative. Named courtesy of a teenager with a bullhorn runners could choose a mist tunnel made of 2 hoses and optimism, or half cups dispensed with haiku levels of brevity. A dad with a lemonade stand pass started a cup folding assembly line that saved precious seconds. A kid with a wagon fetched extra jugs from a community garden that waved a letter of support like a magic scroll. Then the wind performed its own interpretive dance and sent our stack of empty cups into a field like plastic tumbleweeds. 3 of us sprinted after them and discovered that nothing bonds volunteers faster than chasing trash in public. A runner yelled, "You got this," which is the kindest thing you can shout at grown people chasing cups. At 8:40, a mid-pack runner limped to our shade and confessed a calf cramp. Enter Stan, because of course, who produced a foam roller from the trunk of a car, like a magician pulling out a ham. A nurse on a bike stopped, assessed, and taught 2 teenagers how to support a stretch without becoming a tug-of-war. The runner rejoined the race to applause that probably earned him an extra minute per mile of joy. We ran low on cups again. A nearby coffee shop donated a brick of compostable ones because their barista loves marathons and Dewey Decimal. We tape-gunned our banner back to life for the 3rd time and added a hand-lettered sign. But doing great, and also reading counts as cardio. Runners smiled with their whole faces, and another mile became possible. At 9:15, the wheelchair racers arrived, absolute poetry on wheels. We adjusted our station height and technique, offering bottles with pop-tops and respect. One athlete laughed and said, "You're the first table that gets it," which I plan to replay on my deathbed. A DJ further down the course lost power, so our team's team with the bullhorn pivoted to human height machine. He led chants. "What do we want? Water. When do we want it?" In a controlled way, "Thank you." The absurdity kept spirits buoyant, which kept feet moving, which is the entire point. By 10 o'clock, we were giddy. Joy's whistle sounded like confetti. The bookmobile rolled up for the Finish Line Festival and detoured to us with, crucially, more water and a librarian named Ruth who knows logistics like a storm knows rain. We restocked just as the final waves came through, including a woman in a costume that can only be described as sexy car catalog. I did not know to be proud or concerned, so I chose both. Cleanup was its own act of civic theater. We sorted compostables, recycled what we could, and returned a borrowed wagon with a thank you note taped to its handle. The library director stopped by to shake hands and smell like literacy. Runners came back past our table with medals clacking like happy spoons and said, "Thanks, Mile 9, as if Mile 9 were a person. Joy snapped a team photo on a phone that will one day be lost and found again by a good person. On the back of the picture, she wrote, "We hydrated the plot." I went home with a sunburn shaped like a half cup and the conviction that volunteer shifts are just pop-up towns where everyone knows the mayor and the mayor is a whistle named Joy.
What's the most ridiculous office potluck that spiraled into legend? It began with a spreadsheet titled Q3 Morale, potluck sign-up, and a comment that said, "Let's keep it simple. Mains, sides, desserts, label allergens." Someone added a column called Vibes, and that is when the spiral began. Accounting promised 7-layer dip, metaphorical layers included. HR signed up for trust salad. Legal volunteered ambiguously sourced chili with footnotes. I brought Grandma's mac and cheese because I respect a classic and a bechamel. Our conference room smelled like a parade and a college dorm had a baby. The CEO announced a no-pitch zone and then immediately pitched a culture of cooking. We booed affectionately. The first catastrophe was the crockpot cluster. We had exactly 3 outlets and 17 crockpots. Facilities produced a surge protector so old it remembered dial-up. We arranged the pots in concentric circles like a slow cooker Stonehenge and prayed to the gods of amperage. The lights flickered, reconsidered, held. Then came the dessert arms race. Marketing unveiled cupcakes with edible logos. Design countered with a cake shaped like the office plant that we had all already accidentally killed twice. Finance brought a tray of cookies so precisely portioned they looked audited. Someone secretly piped #brand onto a brownie and we all pretended not to see. Games emerged. Sales invented pitch or pie. Tell a 2-sentence story about your dish or get pied with whipped cream. IT hacked a Raspberry Pi to display a live potluck heat map of which dishes were disappearing fastest. Grandma's Mac lit up like July. I experienced career-defining validation that had nothing to do with KPIs. Mid-meal chaos. The fire alarm hiccuped like it remembered a bagel. We stared at the ceiling as one does at weather. Facilities waved a placating clipboard. The CEO whispered, "We can finish eating in the stairwell," which is how you know a company will survive a recession. The alarm chose mercy. We cheered and ate trust salad without asking follow-ups. The legend moment arrived with the mystery Tupperware. No one remembered bringing it, but there it sat. A glass container labeled simply leftovers. Someone opened it and discovered dumplings that made the room go quiet like a virtuous courtroom. The dumplings were perfect. Chewy sons. Savory poems. We hunted the author like a noble witch. Turns out they were from the night security guard, Sam, who didn't think he should come up, because potluck feels like a day people thing. The room committed a mutiny against that sentence. We texted him a photo of an empty dumpling container and the caption, "You are our chef now." He took the freight elevator up in a shy elevator of destiny and walked into an ovation that rattled the badge readers. We made him judge the Golden Spatula Award. He lifted the spatula and declared a 5-way tie. Grandma's mac, ambiguously sourced chili for the footnotes. The dead plant cake, for closure. The sins of Q2 7-layer dip, for narrative. And his own dumplings, for truth. HR tried to stop him from awarding himself. The room overruled HR like a benevolent court. Cleanup revealed the soul of a company. People washed dishes like they were washing each other's days. Someone scrubbed the crockpot crust with an intensity usually reserved for sprints. Facilities accepted a plate of brownies with the wary dignity of a department that knows where the bodies are. The bodies are extension cords. By the afternoon, a shared doc appeared. Recipes or it didn't happen. I uploaded Grandma's Mac with a paragraph of context that included 2 stories about burns and love. Sam's dumpling recipe had 6 ingredients and 1 instruction. Make more than you think. He wrote, leave a few for the night shift. And the doc got quiet in the way text does when it is suddenly about something. Every quarter since, we do a potluck and someone writes a tiny poem on a napkin and tapes it to the break room wall. My favorite, we brought what we could slash and left with a town.